Hello and welcome to the Federal Podcast on India-Australia Test Series. I am Aprameya C. The fourth test ended in a draw on the fifth and final day today in Ahmedabad. Australia was 175 for 2 in its second innings when play was called off. Travis Head top scored with 90 while Marnus Labuschagne remained unbeaten on 63. The draw ensured India retained the Border-Gavaskar Trophy with a 2-1 series victory. Virat Kohli was the player of the match for his 186, while Ravichandran Ashwin and Ravindra Jadeja shared the Player of the Series award. Usman Khwaja was the highest run getter in the series with 333 runs, while Ashwin topped the bowling charts with 25 wickets. To review the final day's play and how the series panned out, we have senior cricket writer R. Kaushik joining us from the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. Thanks, Kaushik, for talking to the Federal.
Hi, Atu. Thank you. My pleasure.
Kaushik, first up, your thoughts on the final day of the series. Just 2 wickets fell.
Yeah, I mean, when we spoke last evening and when we went to the ground this morning, then there was a little bit of hope that the wickets, maybe there will be pressure, maybe the pitch might act up and throw in a few more tricks and make life difficult for the batters. After all, it is a day 5 track in India. But unfortunately, very little of those things happened. There was an early success for India when Ashwin got Matt Kuhneman, the night watchman opener, out leg before. Replay suggested later that had Kuhneman taken the review, then the bowler of missed leg stump. But the early breakthrough came inside the first 20 minutes of the day, and therefore there was a little bit of energy at that time, and there was a little bit of hope. You could see even at that stage that Australia had just taken the light roller, and the pitch, whatever demons there might have been at the early part of the day, was settled by the roller. And it was easy for Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne, easy in the sense of ball was coming really slowly off the pitch. So even if they were foxed a little bit in the air, they had enough time to adjust their shots once the ball pitched and did its thing. So it was very hard work for the bowlers. I'm sure it was a little bit dispiriting. It was quite hot, 35 degrees out in the middle, toiled away for 5 days. And at the end of the day, you've seen that in 5 days, 21 wickets fell. Remember, Australia side not bad for India in the first inning. So in all, 21 wickets fell in the match, out of which 20 went to the bowlers. Umesh Yadav was run out. So you look at this test match and you look at the number of runs that have been scored, and the 20 wickets have fallen in almost 5 full days of cricket. And yeah, sometimes you can't help but feel for the bowlers. I know they had a field day in the first 3 test matches, but I don't think this is a great advertisement for Test cricket either.
Okay, Kaushik, looking back at the whole series, could you talk us through from the first test how India dominated or how Australia fought back into the series?
Yeah, actually, if you look at it, I mean, Steve Smith came for the press conference today and he said that 2-1 was perhaps the fair reflection of the kind of cricket the two teams played. It was a hard-fought series. Remember, those 2 test matches, Australia had their moments, especially in the second test in Delhi. It looked as if they had the upper hand at the end of the second day, and Smith called it a moment of madness, which was on the third morning. And that's really what it was, because when they were so obsessed with the sweep on the Kotla track where the ball was keeping low, the sweep was probably the worst shot that they could have banked on. And we saw a string of 6-7 batsmen playing the sweep and getting out in that 1 hour when Australia crashed and burned and handed the second test match on a platter to India, because they had the test for the taking at various stages. I mean, they had put up 263 on the board, which may not look a lot of runs, but it is a good total on Indian conditions. And then when you have the opposition at 134 for 7, and you feel that, has done most of the job, so you're looking at maybe, at worst, you're a lead of 60 or 70, which would have been huge on the surface, but then you allowed Akshar and Ashwin, and I don't say allowed it with any disrespect, because these two gentlemen are fine batsmen, Ashwin and Akshar, but Australia didn't have enough pressure. They didn't bowl in the right places for sustained periods of time, and obviously the class of the batsmen also stood out. So Australia definitely will feel that Delhi was something that got away from them. They were outclassed in Nagpur once they were bowled out in the first morning for 177. So I think when Rohit made that 120, and again, Akshar Patel made a half century coming down the order. Ravindra Jadeja made a half century. And so those 2 games, Australia might have thought that they were in with a chance, especially in Delhi, except for that 1 hour where they just swept themselves to their doom. They dominated indoor from the beginning. And this was a match that I don't think anybody could have won, really, because that is the condition, that is the hand that they were dealt. So, yeah, I mean, overall, India were the better side, we would say, because they had the better resources, they had the better spinners, they had the more experienced spinners, they were familiar with the conditions. These are conditions in which Akshar Patel and Ravindra Jadeja and R. Ashwin have grown up, and they know how to bowl on these pitches. But having said that, I think Australia will take a great deal of heart from how Matt Kuhneman and especially Todd Murphy performed. We know Nathan Lyon is a class act. We know what he's done. He's got 450 plus wickets. He's a finger spinner playing in Australia, mostly for Australia. So we know, the whole world knows what Nathan Lyon is capable of. But Kuhneman and Murphy are young kids playing in their first series in India. Both of them made their test debuts in this series, and to see how well they bowled, and especially Murphy. I think Murphy will go on to do some special things for Australia. So that's something that Australia can take heart from. Lyon is 35; he's not going to be there forever. So, and he's carried the Australian spin attack all on his own for the last decade or so. So, Australia will be emboldened and heartened by the fact that they have quality spinners that they can fall back on going forward.
And in the recent past, this is India's fourth consecutive Test series win over Australia. India seems to have mastered the art of beating Australia, which was not the case maybe 15 years back, wasn't it, Kaushik?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back in time, India have always had the better of Australia at home, or not always. For the most part, India have had the better of Australia at home. Because you go back and since the 1970s, beginning of the 1970s, India has lost only one series at home to Australia, which was in 2004. And they came very close in 2001 until Lakshman and Dravid happened and Harbhajan happened, and India overturned the first Test defeat and pulled off a tremendous 2-1 series victory. That was in 2001. But otherwise, Australia they've competed in India, but they have not been able to conquer what Steve Waugh called the final frontier. And the problem with India was that India were sometimes competitive in Australia, not all the time, but they never had that final push. They dominated the series in 1986. For instance, there were 3 Test series and India dominated the series, but it ended in a 0-0 stalemate. In 1977-78, when Australia were missing a lot of players who had gone to Kerry Packer's World Series cricket, and India had a really experienced team under Bishan Bedi. A lot of experienced resources, people who had played in Australia previously, people who were pedigreed and who had scored runs in all parts of the world, who had taken wickets in all parts of the world, against an inexperienced sort of Australian team, because the main guys were all away playing World Series cricket. And that series, India lost 3-2. So India, otherwise, apart from that, India didn't really push consistently for top honours in Australia until, let's say, 2003-04. When that series ended in a 1-1 draw, right. And then 2007-8 could have gone either way. Only that 2011-12 series was a bit of a nightmare, but after that India have been quite competitive. And now the fact that you have this fabulous pace attack that can take wickets in overseas conditions on a sustained basis, you have batsmen who are more adept at playing the shorter balls, the horizontal bat shots. So now that India have those resources to fall back on, they have competed favorably in Australian conditions. The last Test series victory was remarkable for various reasons. I mean, you started the series in Adelaide, and then you got bowled out for 36, and by the time you went to Gabba for the last Test match, 6 of the people who played the first Test match were not available for the last Test match. You had debutants galore, and then you went and chased down a record 329 and won the Test match at the Gabba. So India have started to travel better. Australia have always been competitive in India, but somehow since 2004 they have not been able to take the final step where they can better India in India.
Right. Kaushik, one more good news is that India has qualified for the World Test Championship, and again India will meet Australia at the Oval in London in the first week of June. Your thoughts on that big match, because still we are more than 2 months away. Will this result count, or it's a fresh match altogether with different conditions?
Everything is different, isn't it, Apu? I mean, this is part of a series that is a one-off. This is the home backyard of one country, that is a neutral venue for both countries. So yeah, it will be a different setup entirely. If you look at it this morning when we went to the ground, and play had just started in the New Zealand versus Sri Lanka game in Christchurch. Play was delayed on the final day, and it started quite late. And our guys were keeping an eye, the Indian guys were keeping an eye on what was happening in Christchurch, because if New Zealand denied Sri Lanka victory in this Test match, and India was assured of a place in the final, irrespective of what happened to this Test match. And just a couple of seconds before the start of the post-lunch session, we were watching the match in the media room, and when Ken Williamson, New Zealand, to the fantastic last ball victory. And obviously, when we knew, and the team knew, that New Zealand had won. So in the huddle, Kohli shook hands with all the other players and did a little clap, and you could suddenly see that, okay, so that monkey is out of back. You know that you're into the final of the World Test Championship for the second year in a row, for the second cycle in a row. Ironical that New Zealand, who defeated India in the last final, were the ones who facilitated India's entry into the final this time around. I think a completely different match in different circumstances and different conditions. Interestingly enough, Oval is the venue, and of all the pitches in England, if you like, the Oval is the one which is closest to an Australian pitch because it gives a little bit of more pace and a little bit of more bounce than other surfaces in England. So that's a bit of an Australian advantage. But then again, Oval is also the kind of place where as the match progresses, the spinners come into play. So that's a plus for the Indians. I think it's got to set up quite nicely for what should be a cracker of a one-off test match. Like you said, there's a lot of time between now and that test match. There's a lot of white ball cricket between now and that test match for the Indian boys. So I guess once you get closer to the World Test Championship final, then plans will be implemented. Because in these next 2 months, that once the one-day series is over, Rahul Dravid and the support staff have all the time to make the plans and then to familiarize the players with the plans and to work out ways of how to execute those plans. I think that will happen in the last 1 week.
One last question, Kaushik. Rohit Sharma came for the press conference post-match. What did he say about the series and the World Test Championship final?
Yeah, I mean, he spoke about the various challenges that India faced throughout the series, how well Australia bounced back after the second test in Delhi. I mean, they were 0-2 down. Their captain had gone home. David Warner had gone home. Josh Hazlewood had gone home. So they had a lot of people who were missing, key people who were missing for the second half of the series. And for them to bounce back from the manner of the defeat in Delhi especially, and to acquit themselves with so much credit, to win comfortably, handsomely in Indore, and then to hold their own in the final test here in Ahmedabad. I think Australia can walk out of this series with their head held high. That's something that Rohit Sharma acknowledged as well, and he spoke about how much of a challenge it is to play Australia because they just don't give up. And again, that is what was shocking in Delhi, that you don't expect Australia to just roll over, and that's what they did in Delhi. But then the true Australian spirit and their never say die attitude sort of expressed itself in Indore and then again in Ahmedabad. So from that point of view, it was a good workout for the Indians, especially in the final test. They spent 2 days under a blazing sun to concede 480 runs. They were on the field for 167.2 overs. And then when they came out to bat, however flat the pitch might be, 480 is a lot of runs. And the fatigue of having fielded for 11 and a half hours. So therefore, to regather their focus, to be able to physically and mentally stand up to the challenge of scoring 480, I think that's something that India will take a great deal of pride out of. Of course, Shreyas Iyer was missing from the batting lineup because of the back injury, so India were a man short. But you would never have guessed, looking at the way they batted. I mean, Akshar Patel has been beautiful this series. It was great that Shubman Gill reiterated his credentials with that lovely flowing 100. But I think the most heartening development from an Indian cricket perspective would be what Virat Kohli did yesterday with that monumental 186. Kohli is the kind of streak player that we know. We have seen him in the past, and even as recently as from September last year when he made the T20 100 against Afghanistan in the Asia Cup. After that, he's made 3 ODI 100s in the space of a month. And so now the expectation and the hope is that now that he's got this Test 100 monkey off his back, that runs will start to flow again. And runs flowing from Kohli's bat is always a great sign for the Indians.
Right. Thanks a lot, Kaushik. It was great.
One other thing, if I can just
please.
Make a little bit. Yeah. So we also spoke about the short time gap between the end of the IPL and the start of the World Test Championship final.
Yeah, just a 1 week gap.
Yeah, it's a week's gap, and it's not an ideal scenario. But in these times of heavy schedules and trying to fit in tournaments into windows, then it is the hand you're dealt, and that's what you have to do. But India have chosen to be a little bit proactive. Like, for instance, we were speaking off air about how Rohit spoke about sending Duke balls to the guys who are likely to be featuring in that World Test Championship final, because the ball that they use in England for the final will be the Duke's ball, and not the SG test that we use in India or the Kookaburra that they use in Australia. So therefore, it's important. A lot of these guys have played with the Duke's ball before. It's not like it's a ball that's new to them, but then they haven't done so in a long time. So the feel of each ball is different, and therefore, if they can use the Duke's ball at net once in a while practicing with their franchise with the white Kookaburra, that's a great advantage for the bowlers to be to just get used to the feel of this Duke's ball in your hand. I mean, we can all say that it's all the same size and it's the same shape, and so why is it different? But the feel is very, very important. You know, the way some balls are more lacquer, so some of them are more shiny, some of them are smoother. So you just need to feel that it sits nicely in your hand, and to that extent, and then to be able to control the swing, to be able to bowl cross seam. You just get so much valuable information. You're just topping up your memory. You know, you have all these things in your memory bank, but just to go back to the Duke's ball, even during the IPL and refresh your memory is an invaluable tool to have. And also more pertinently, Rohit also spoke about how 6 of the 10 teams will be eliminated from the tournament by the 21st of May. I think that's probably when the last league match is going to be played. And so therefore they get a little more time, the guys who are in that team who are likely, in those 6 franchises, who are likely to be in the World Test Championship, will have a little more time to prepare. So maybe they'll look for a camp of sorts from maybe 8, 9, 10, whoever the number of players are from those franchises who have been eliminated, and there could be a short camp. So these are things that it's clear that even as early as in the second week of March, the think tank is thinking about the finals in the first week of June, which I think is a very healthy and very encouraging development as far as the Indian cricket is concerned.
Right. Thanks, Kaushik. It was great talking to you over the course of this series for more than a month. We'll get to talk to you more on maybe next another series.
Thanks, Apu. It was my pleasure. Good fun interacting with you and good, nice chat. So let's hope that we can resume this partnership very soon.
Thank you.